There's another segment of Midnights of Our Past. This week we're going to do Pride Bushido 1. This was something Pride decided to do something different. It was kind of like an event to showcase up-and-coming fighters, fighters that maybe are coming up, or they just need a little more hype or a few more fights to get to that next level, or we're coming off a loss. They had everything in the Bushido events. They did put a lot of stars on there too. Like this first one, it was stacked. This first one, they actually had Team Japan versus Team Gracie, which was awesome. It was a 5 versus 5 teams. The head coaches of the teams, Hoist Gracie of Team Gracie, and Yoshida was the head coach of Team Japan, and those two had their fight in I believe it was the previous year before at Shockwave. So they still had their grudge match. They wanted a rematch with each other. So there was a little beef between Yoshida and Hoist Gracie, and the teams were actually pretty cool. It was Carlos Newton was on Team Japan with Dunkan Junsuke Mishima, Kazuhiro Nakamura, Daiju Takase, and Kazuhiro Hamanaka. And on Team Gracie, it was Henzo Gracie, Half Gracie, Daniel Gracie, Rodrigo Gracie, and Hein Gracie. Also, there was a lot of... so in that tournament, it was really interesting. We'll start off with those. I'll go through. There was a lot of other great matches on this card. Shogun, Alexander Melenenko, Mirko Krokop. We'll get into those after. First, I want to cover the Team Japan versus Team Gracie. The Hein Gracie fight, this was really exciting. This one ended in soccer kicks. Poor Hamanaka, those Pride rules, those soccer kicks is just perfect for someone like Hein Gracie, who's violent, aggressive, similar to like a Vandalay. Hein Gracie was always out there to kind of take his opponent out. So that's an interesting matchup. Daiju Takase versus Rodrigo Gracie. This is a really good match, technical. Daiju Takase was actually this was the fight after he tapped out Anderson Silva to a triangle choke. So Daiju Takase was riding high after the Anderson Silva win into this fight with Rodrigo. So that was interesting. And Kazuhiro Nakamura versus Daniel Gracie, those guys always, were exciting in Pride. That's a good fight. Dunkan Junsuke Mishima versus Half Gracie. Mishima, this dude's a character. I'm sure some of you remember him. He fought in UFC a couple times. He fought Kenny Florian and Joe Stevenson. He ended up losing to both of them, but he did fight in the UFC, so some of you might remember him from there. He's a little goofy. He's quite the character. He was an entertainer, and they love that over there in Japan. And also Carlos Newton versus Henzo Gracie. This was a great match. These guys went back and forth. A lot of submission attempts, strikes, and this was an important fight back then. This happened in 2003. At 170, this was an important fight at 170 back then. Carlos Newton was a top welterweight, and so was Henzo Gracie. So that was an important fight. Let's get into some of the other matches that were on here. You had Alexander Emelianenko making his pro debut against he made it against Asuero Silva on this card. That was an exciting fight. Shogun Mauricio Shogun Hua making his pro debut against Akira Shoji. He ended up knocking him out. That was a great fight. To see guys like Shogun, they need a stage, a platform to build them, and they had these Bushido events for guys like that who are coming up or making their appearance. So there was a lot of good ones with that. Also, Sergey Haritonov was on this card. A lot of people know Sergey's, another strong Russian heavyweight fighter. And also in the main event, it was Mirko Krokop versus Dos Caras Jr., which was a legendary fight. Krokop ended up, KOing him with a huge head kick. Dos Caras was wearing his pro wrestling mask, and Mirko ended up head kicking him and splitting him. You could see the blood running down his mask, and the Pride officials trying to take his mask off while he was unconscious because he caused the big cut on his head from the head kick. Mirko was on a tear. The fight before that, he head kick knocked out Igor Vovchanchin. That was another one of his legendary highlight reel knockouts, head kick knockouts, and he just added another one to it with his Dos Caras knockout. So this was definitely a legendary event. And Bushido went on to be like the lightweight showcase event where they would showcase all the lightweight guys, it helped build them up. I know a lot of people talk about like Demetrius and a lot of the other lighter weight classes in the UFC having trouble like building up their name. Pride, they had the Bushido that they kind of leaned on to build those stars. It turned Gomi into huge stars and a lot of other fighters as well. It gave them a showcase to come on, and they also always put on like heavyweights and light heavyweights. They'll throw them on here. Like Vanderlei has fought on Bushido, Shogun, Fedor, I believe it was the sixth Bushido, he fought TK on there. They'd always put other fights on there to draw eyes to the card, and it would give eyes to those smaller weight class fighters as well. So that's something maybe the UFC could do if they have trouble building lighter weight classes in the future. Maybe have showcase events with those lighter weight classes, but also put something that'll draw the fans to the event to see those. Like a big name like Mirko, Fedor, how they used to bring in their big stars, Shogun. That's definitely a good way to draw attention to those lighter weight classes. I feel like they had a good formula with Bushido, and it was a great show. I always loved watching them. In between the big Pride events, that we always had those Bushido events in between that were very nice. Thank you guys for joining me for another episode of MMA at Midnight. Join me for the post-fight show for the Bellator 192 and for UFC 220 this weekend. You enjoy the fights, and we'll see you next time. Bye.